If you haven't seen the Mythbusters video we're talking about, this probably won't be all that useful for you, but you're welcome to stay if there isn't another session you'd rather go to. But what we're talking about is getting rid of our checklist of right and wrong answers and having more of an open conversation with the goal of saving more lives and removing the barriers that we unintentionally put up between letting animals find more homes. So let's see where we leave off. How many in here do vet checks? So you call their vet to find out if their current animals, resident animals, are up to date on vaccines. Way up high. I want to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's about half the room. For those who don't, would you like to share why you don't? Did you used to and you don't anymore? Come on up here.
So we have on our application an area where you can fill out your vet if you already have one, and we will sometimes call as a last resort if there are a lot of red flags on the application, but there's nothing that we could decline, and we just need to have a little extra help deciding one way or another. But we don't check for a couple reasons. We're trying to step away from applications, actually. A couple of our directors attended the HSUS Expo and are on board with a lot of what was going on, which is great. It took a lot of wind to get up here. Okay. We don't want the application to be an excuse to decline somebody, so we have a lot of our questions on the list in order to start the conversation as opposed to end the conversation.
And I do have some adoption screening kind of like a checklist of open-ended questions, and I have copies, so everyone feel free to take one with you. Maybe it will help you kind of redesign your current application or your adoption process, or give you some thought starters on how to get those conversations going. I think one of the really hard things for us when it comes to conversation-based adoptions is a lot of us have been doing this for a little while, and our love for people may not be what it used to. So, we have to continuously remind ourselves that we cannot help pets without people. We absolutely need them. So one way or another, we either have to get over it, or we've got to find people who want to volunteer and who enjoy having those conversations. They're a people person. Somehow, they are still a people person. So maybe they're the ones that should have the more in-depth conversation. If your fosters are allowed to do adoptions or participate in the adoption process, they're a great one to have this conversation because they know the animal the best. It's been in their home, they've been taking care of it, they obviously have its best interests in mind, and they may know other questions they need to ask based on the specifics for their fosters. So I encourage you to make your foster care parents adoption ambassadors. They can be incredibly helpful to you, and it is very difficult when one person or a small group of people handles your entire adoption process. So talk to your fosters, see who might be interested in being an adoption ambassador or participating and having those phone conversations. So somehow or another, we have to either rejuvenate our love for people, or we have to find people who want to have those conversations. So how many people, you've adopted an animal out and they've decided it's not the right animal for them, or for whatever reason they're going to return it. How many of you would allow them to adopt again later if they came back? That's actually pretty good. Okay, so Vicki says it might depend on the circumstances.
Maybe your cat didn't get along with that particular cat, and that's not the right match.
Right, so maybe it's not the people, it wasn't the right pet, it wasn't the appropriate match. And when we're talking matching, we're looking at everything from energy level to expectations. And expectations are probably one of your number one things you need to look for and try to manage in your applicants or your adopters. Do they have realistic expectations for adoption or for this specific animal? Because if they are looking for just instantly perfect, remote controlled, Toys R Us is down the street, aisle 5, stuffed animals, top shelf. That's their best bet. But we don't know that unless we have a conversation. We can't just go off of our checklist. So the fact that so many of you raised your hands about the fact you'd give them a second chance, even though they returned an animal, is great. That's a step in the right direction if we're talking about open conversation-based adoptions. So for those of you who saw the video or you've had a chance to think about it a little bit, talk to others, anybody else have a thought, light bulb moment, aha moment, areas in your own processes or rescue or shelter where you may be able to make some changes? Anything come to mind?
More of just an example. I'm a volunteer with Paws for Life, and we recently had an adopter who, on his application, said that for the declaw question, that they would consider declawing if necessary. And normally that's something that any rescue would immediately go, red flag, we can't adopt, they want to declaw our kittens. Well, we called them up, we talked to them, and I had found out that all his previous cats that him and his mom had owned had been declawed. They got them that way. Whether it was a shelter or another rescue, they always picked declawed cats because that's what they were used to. When we talked about what declawing was, he had no idea. So he ended up adopting these 2 kittens. They now use nail caps. And because we encourage talking to adopters, being kind of friends with them, keeping in touch, me and him, his girlfriend, and his mother all became friends on Facebook. Because of that connection we made, because of the fact that we helped educate them, they're now fostering for us. His mother's now fostering another cat. If we had just simply said no, not only would 2 kittens not have had a home, he would have continued thinking declawing would have been okay because that's what he knew before that, and we would have never had a foster. So talking to people and getting to know them and getting to know why they think the way they do is important. And if you think that they are doing something that we disagree with, like declawing, education. We can't just say no because you do this. We have to teach them why they shouldn't.
It's a very good point. And like I said earlier, I think declawing is a tough one. But education. And I think, too, as animal rescues, we inherently want super control. We've rescued this animal, blood, sweat, and tears, and we are going to make sure that come hell or high water, this animal is in a better place, better environment for the rest of its life. And that's a great goal and thought, but that kind of super control isn't within our ability. And so we have to really take a look at what is within our control and what isn't. Because when we try to exert our animal rescue or super control, we end up very frustrated and disappointed because we just don't have that. How many groups require that an animal be returned to the rescue? So family can no longer keep it, it absolutely has to come back to us. Pretty standard. We've always been that way too. And it was hard to catch the point on the video, but what she said was, why? If Joe, who just adopted a dog, even let's say 2 years ago from us, can no longer keep it for whatever reason, based on the contract he signed, that dog has to come back to us. So we now have to find a spot for that dog, which now takes up a spot for a dog from a shelter that we could have intake. But maybe Joe has a family member who wants the dog. Maybe Joe's brother is able to take this dog. And from the dog's point of view, he knows Joe's brother. He's been to his house before, or Joe's been over to him, so this is somebody familiar to him. So rather than absolutely requiring that the animal come back to us and take up that space again and be seen as another bounce, why not let Joe give it to his brother? Are we harming the dog by doing it? Are we saving ourselves some space? Again, just a conversation. I don't have all the answers, but it's something to think about. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, we do, if it's like within the family or a close relative or a friend, we just do a transfer of application. There is no fee. We do the same steps and we staple that to that so we know where everything's going and do a new picture, a new adoption, and keep it going.
Does the new family sign a new contract?
Yes.
They do. Who had their hand up back there? I'm curious.
We started doing something new for us anyway on our contract where we have a statement and we talk to the adopters very carefully about this, that we partner with them for the life of the animal. And I say it just like that to them, for the life of the animal. We are your partner. Now what that did is it created a lot more work for me, absolutely, but now we communicate with people all the time about what's going on. So if they can't keep a pet that they've adopted, it's not like, oh my gosh, that animal has to come back to your town and all of that. It's now a conversation about what's going on and where, what are your options right now with that pet? Because you're right, a our very first animal got dumped without us knowing, like how would you know if somebody took it and dumped it somewhere?
Yep.
Like
We-
I'm shipping to your rescue.
We just had this exact case, and it's bizarre that you bring it up. We adopted out a beagle to a family of 2 adults, and they passed our screening process, and everything was great, and it was a great match, and so they took home Elvis the beagle. And 3 years later, just last month, I get a call from the Humane Society of Huron Valley. We have a dog named Elvis here of yours. Oh, geez, you must have gotten lost. I'll call the owners and let them know. Oh, no, they surrendered him to us. Okay, we have a contract that they signed that says that, before you can abandon or relinquish the animal anywhere, you've got to contact us. So I did what we've always done, and I filed a civil suit in Washtenaw County against them because our contract says there's a minimum $1,000 fine for violating any of the terms of our contract. And so we went in, and Washtenaw County has you go through mediation before you'll actually see a judge. And so we sat down, and by the time we shared our stories, the mediator said, yeah, this is an open and shut case. You guys have no defense. Do you want to just pay them now, or do you want to actually go before a judge? And I told them, listen, $1,000 is actually very high. I'm trying to get your attention in the contract that this is very serious to us. So we settled, and we agreed that they'd only pay us half, but I think I got my point across to him that contracts are a very serious thing. You read them and sign them. Now, so we went and got Elvis from Huron Valley and brought him back to foster care and evaluated him and put him back up for adoption, and he's since been adopted. But I don't know. I think this is another area for us. I think maybe we don't have to absolutely require that the animal immediately come back to us, but maybe it's okay to require that they at least contact us and let us know that there's something going on. For whatever reason, they can no longer keep the dog. And then we can talk about options. And then we're not in an adversarial relationship where we are angry. I don't care what your reason is. You've had our dog for 3 years, and now all of a sudden, get rid of that. It just burns you up anyway. It doesn't have any effect on anything else. And partner with them and talk to them about it. What's the problem? Maybe we can fix it, and the dog doesn't need to leave the home. Or maybe there's an option for the dog where, if somebody's fallen deathly ill, they're entering hospice, they're going into a type of environment where they can't have the dog anymore, but a family member or a friend or a neighbor is willing to take that dog in. And whether or not you do another contract or ask them to pay or do another application is completely up to you. But maybe that hard and fast line of you got to bring it back to us and we'll take it from there. Maybe we don't have to do that. Maybe we can skip that step and, again, have an open conversation. Maybe that's in the best interest of the animal.
Use it more as a safety net, so they know that, oh my gosh, it doesn't work out. I don't have to scramble to find a place where then we can just bring it back.
Right. So she was saying they use it as a safety net. Any other thoughts at the moment? Anybody want to share what they've maybe one of their takeaways from this, or how you might be able to apply some of this to the way you do adoptions? Okay, so I want to continue with our video. Let me do a time check. Who's got time? And you're in here till when? 4:15. All right. So, is there anybody in here who's familiar with the Pets for Life program from HSUS? So I'll give you a little bit of background. For a very long time, rescues, shelters, advocates have kind of ignored the underprivileged societies, the poor, the areas where there just aren't a lot of resources, there's not a lot of jobs, or there's not a lot of money. And we've ignored them as being a safety net for animals. And so Pets for Life was started to try and combat some of that. It has all kinds of pieces to their program. One of the ones I love the most is the combating dog fighting, where they'll go into a neighborhood or an area and start free training for people and their dogs. And this is very, very basic training. Bring your dog, and we're going to teach you how to teach it sit. And all these, usually guys or young guys with their dogs will come, and they learn very basics. And with that, they get a free bag of food, or they get a collar and a leash instead of the wire that's around the dog's neck. And so the concept is they're showing people how to build a relationship with their dog, that their dog doesn't just have to be a means to make money or a means of pride in the neighborhood because yours is the best fighter. They learn a different value for their dog and build a bond. And and at the same time they learn, their dog learns, and it's actually worked in Atlanta and Chicago to bring down some of those numbers regarding dog fighting. And that's part of their Pets for Life program, and I just think it's great, and I think it would do wonders in Michigan.
And then there are the people who don't even realize maybe that adopting is an option for them. There are entire communities which our movement hasn't actually engaged with. And these are those Pets for Life communities where, HSUS is starting to do a lot of work with many of you to reach them. These are areas that are lower income, underserved in many ways, including maybe not easy access to veterinarians and other services. And sadly, there is a common misconception that the people who live in these communities either don't take good care of their pets or they don't love them as much. And I can tell you that, we've seen this through Pets for Life, that's really just not the case. I mean, we've met tens of thousands of pet owners in these communities, and I've had the joy of firsthand getting to know several of them in the limited time I've gotten to spend in our areas. And we know that they love their pets, we see it. But 90% of the people who live in these communities have never had any contact with the local shelter or rescue. They don't even recognize that we're a resource to them. And while they love their pets and they take good care of them, they aren't getting them from us. In fact, in underserved communities, only 3% of the pets in households are coming from shelters or rescues. And you'll recall earlier I mentioned 30% nationally are coming from shelters and rescues. So in underserved areas, it's simply a paltry 3%. And many of the pets in these communities are actually the offspring of other neighbors, family and friends' pets. They're being taken in as strays off the street, or people are taking them in from someone who can't keep them anymore. And overall, we know through our Pets for Life research that 87% of the pets in these communities are not spayed or neutered. It's 87% not spayed or neutered. But the folks who are taking in these pets, either they're taking them off the street or taking them from someone who can't care for them anymore, they kind of see themselves as rescuers, as natural adopters. So they're open to the message, we just haven't engaged them at all. Unfortunately, I can tell you who has reached out to them, and that's the puppy mill industry. My colleagues in the puppy mill campaign at HSUS tell me that they're beginning to target underserved areas with things like layaway plans and other options for them to purchase pets. So it's all the more reason that we need to be proactive in reaching these folks and engaging them in adoption, right? Wouldn't we all agree on that? It's a little startling, I think. So before you tell me, though, if someone's on a limited income and they live in an underserved area, they just shouldn't have a pet. Because they probably can't afford to go to the vet, they probably can't afford this or that. They just should not get a pet, so we should kind of prevent them from getting a pet. Well, apparently we all do our bad stuff in college, as Emily was telling you, she lied to the shelter. Well, when I was a newly graduated college student and I was newly married, I had two dogs. One that I had since I was a kid, and the other my husband and I found on the street before we tied the knot. My husband was starting graduate school, and I was our sole breadwinner, making a miserable amount of money. Combined income was less than minimum wage. I was buying groceries with maxed out credit cards, and the student loans were piling up because my husband was in grad school. So what did I do? First thing I did was get another dog that I couldn't afford. I had no idea how I would provide care for these three dogs, but I loved them, and I thought, I can figure this out. And this is Moxie, who I took in. She was kind of a problem child, but I loved her anyway. But anyway, so Moxie ended up living with us for 14 years, till she died of old age, and we figured it out. It took us a lot of years to get out of debt and kind of get on track, and now, thankfully, I have a decent paying job. But, but we're not really unique, and I'm not unique, in that I really couldn't afford a dog, but I did it anyway. And I'd like you to meet, through this video, 3 of the clients from our Pets for Life communities. All of these folks, they're wonderful people. They're all living on very low incomes in very underserved communities. But as you'll see in this video, all 3 of them love their pets so much and would do anything for them. So if we could play that.
My husband went off, him and his brother. I got a phone call saying, I got a surprise for you. Because I grew up with all type of animals, lizards, this, that, and the other, dog, cat. And I said, okay. So my brother-in-law made it first. He opened up his jacket, little bitty something. We could hold OG in one hand. just a little tiny head and ears. Okay, but he was a terrorizer, right? What you talking about? He chewed up shoes. We had to pay for blinds because he tore up every blind in the apartment. Okay, and then we got him, and he just started getting used to us and everything, because he was a baby. We learned his ways and everything, and he's a big sporty cat. So he's a tabby cat. We didn't know that. He's a tabby cat.
What does OG bring to your life?
Some of everything. Unconditional love. Just joy.
What are you feeling right now just looking at him?
He's a big old handsome something with that pink nose, and I love him, and he loves my mom.
I have Belle. It's a pet that I've had for about 7 years now, and Thomas brought her to me as a surprise gift because I just had lost a pet due to cancer, and she was 18 years old. So Belle, about her end, and she's been very, wonderful. She's very smart pup, and I was off of work for a year, and I spent a lot of time training her and stuff, so we came very close in that year's time that I was off. She's very protective, and she's about one of the best animals we've ever had before.
And how many dogs do you have?
Right now I have 3. I have Doc, that we rescued out here in the neighborhood, and I have Bo, who is 17 years old today, and he's, so all 3 of them gets along very well. That means everything, They like my children, When I leave and go to work, they looks at me like, well, we know you're going to work today, And I'm always giving them treats when I get in the evening time to let them know that I'm back home, and I appreciate it, and I love you all, And they really brings a lot of joy to me in my life,
My pets means everything to me. They means everything.
Can you go into a little bit of detail about that?
Yeah, well, I hate to be cliche, but they're the reason why I wake up in the morning to walk them, to feed them, to take care of them, to love them. I love my pets. They love me. We're like we're just intertwined. We're one. We're one. We all work systematically.
Would you say they complete your life?
They complete my life. We complete each other. We complement each other. They're everything to me. Pets are essential. I'll tell you something. I may be going off a little bit, but my grandma used to always say, if a person don't have plants or animals in the house, they mean they're selfish. They don't have time to take care of anything else. So I make sure that I have plants and animals because both of those things takes time to take care of. I always have time for the next living thing.
Wow, right? And I don't know if you noticed, but Danny, the second gentleman who was interviewed outside of his home, reinforcing what Dr. Weiss was saying, did you hear that he said in the beginning of that video that he was given his dog as a surprise gift 7 years ago, and his other pets were living to be 17 and 18 years old. So aren't these exactly the kinds of people we want to have adopting from us? And all of the homes and all the people that you've seen here either were or would have been missed, either denied or judged or just simply never engaged. And imagine how happy, particularly the folks in that video, would be to see an adoption event in their community, and that has never happened before. So when we're too stringent or judgmental, or we don't engage at all, we end up taking the best source of pets off the table as an option. And obviously it doesn't mean that people aren't going to get pets. Everyone we're talking about today found a way to get a pet. They're just getting them often from sources we prefer that they didn't. And as Emily alluded to, when that happens, a lot of the pets they end up obtaining aren't sterilized, maybe not even vaccinated, and they may not be able to get access to those services on their own. And they don't have that important resource, you, when they have an issue or a concern or a question or a challenge. So not only have we lost a potentially good adopter, maybe a great adopter, we've also lost a really important connection to the pet owners in our community. And for what? Is it to protect our shelter and rescue pets? I understand that. I mean, I get the desire for us to heavily screen. All of us who work in this field have seen really bad things. There's no doubt about it. And we want to do what's best for these animals that are in our care. But we also have to remember that there are more than 160 million cats and dogs living in homes across the country. And despite our skewed perspective because of the work that we do, bad homes are actually pretty rare. The vast majority are good. And when we put up barriers to adoption, or we don't engage at all, we end up sending good people to bad sources for their pets. And we also have to remember that people want to do the right thing. They may not do it exactly like you or I do it, but they're providing loving homes. And adopting to them provides us such a good opportunity to share that information and help them be the best pet parent that they can be. We get an opportunity then to empower them to make good choices, not only about where they get their pet, but then how they treat their pet. And as we do this, we begin to shift that supply and demand marketplace and fill our communities with adopted pets who are spayed and neutered. So there are 3 million cats and dogs who will lose their lives this year simply for lack of a home. When we set the bar so high that good people can't reach it, we really end up failing these other animals that we could have helped. They're just waiting for that opportunity for their loving home. And the Edens and the Dannies, they're all out there. And they want to engage. They want to save a life. They want to adopt. So are they good enough? And how do we make that decision? And where's the line? I mean, would I have been good enough? So my final question to all of us is, are we going to let people help us? Can we let go of these preconceived notions of what people should be and the judgments, and instead embrace these folks, all the folks in our communities, and engage them to let them help us to save the lives of homeless pets? Thank you. Oh, and now it's my good pleasure to introduce Todd Kramer from PetSmart Charities. Thank you.
Invisible. Well, hi. So, who's wearing this really cool shirt? Yeah? Yeah? So this morning, actually throughout the week, we asked you to wear this shirt today to show your support for community cats. Together we can save community cats. And now I'm asking you to work together to implement open adoptions to save more lives. And that's really what both Dr. Weiss and Betsy have been talking about today. There we go. And I'm going to tell you how to do it. Just in a few easy steps. Not really, but there's lots of us you can reach out to help you get it full force. So the first thing is to educate yourself regarding what open adoptions really is. What's it mean? And you've heard it. You've heard it's about, hey, looking at everybody as a potential adopter, understanding that most folks want to do the right thing. And what it means to implement is to take your current process and have fewer restrictions. Look at each individual animal as the individual that it is. All yellow labs are awesome, right? Not the one I had. Mine was not nice at all. Not the same as other yellow labs. A border collie cattle dog mix needs a yard. It can't live in a 700 square foot apartment. It's active. It's going to get in trouble. Not mine. Mine does one thing when I'm not around. Sleeps. So not every dog is the same. And it's the same for adopters. Not every person is the same. So you can educate yourself regarding open adoptions. You can go to many of the resources that were mentioned. You can go to PetSmartCharities.org. We've got 3 webinars on there under the Open Adoption Series or Increasing Adoption Series. And 2 are mine. One is Open Adoptions and learning what it really means using the PetSmart Charities Adoption Form 2. and the other is about conversational adoptions, which is the workshop that I delivered this morning, if you were in that one. And then arm yourself with the adoption research. And Dr. Weiss gave you some. There's more out there on ASPCA Pro. Animalsheltering.org, I'm sure, has lots of great resources too. So go there and arm yourself with this information, know what you're talking about, know the value in it, and then, there we go. And then your leadership has to define who the organization is. Who are you? What do you believe in? What's your mission, vision, and values? Your vision is the big picture. So in a perfect world of animal welfare, what's it look like? And then your values are, of that, what do you believe in? Do you believe in being good to people? The mission statement at Noah's Ark Animal Welfare Association that I ran in New Jersey for a couple of years had right in that we valued pets and people, which meant that everything we did had to include a component for being good to people and building that bond between people and pets. But we valued those folks. And then your mission is really what your piece of that big vision is. What are you going to do to get there? What do you represent? And you need these things because every time you go to implement a program or make a change, you have to ask yourself, does it fit our mission? Does this fit our vision? Does it fit our values? It's very easy to have the bright, shiny object syndrome. Squirrel. Right? It's very easy to do that. But when you have mission, vision, and values and you refer to those, you can make sure that you stay on track. So who are you? And where do you fit in? Where does the open adoptions fit into that? Do you want to save more lives? Do you want to maximize lives saved? Do you want to do that with a sense of urgency? Because in my opinion, you should be. You should be doing it with a sense of urgency, but doing it responsibly. And you can do that with open adoptions. You can do that with a conversation. Oh, I want to go back to that because those are my dogs. Well, my dogs. And unfortunately, the little dog isn't with us anymore, but the other dog is Lulu, my Border Collie cattle dog mix, the one that sleeps all the time. So leadership gets on board. They decide who you are, this fits, you've armed them with the research, you said we should do this, we should do pets at Christmas time because it makes a difference. And now you have to design your adoption program. So what restrictions can you just not let go of? What are you just not ready to let go of? I'd like to see you let go of most of them, but maybe, that pets as gifts, you're just not there. You can let go of the landlord checks. Maybe you can stop doing the home visits. Maybe you don't require the meet and greets. But what is it that you can let go of? How are you going to do this? Then you think about, well, what forms do you need? What forms do you need? I would recommend getting rid of your application, especially if it's more than a page, and go with a survey, a profile, something that collects the information you need for your database. You want that information because, well, you want to know where your pet's going, but you also want it for fundraising. So get that information, learn a little bit about the adopter, what's important to them, what they're looking for. Then all that other stuff you want to know about what a typical day looks like for Fluffy, you can get that through conversation. You can just talk to me and get the answers to your questions. Then you want to decide what kind of training you need, what your time frame is for being ready. What if it doesn't work? How are you going to know if it works? What's your program look like? Oh, wrong button. And then you need to train your staff and you need to test the program. So I would recommend picking your best adoption counselors, 2 people. Teach them, train them, show them what the research says, make sure they understand your mission, your vision, your values. Train them and test it. And you could do that by picking a day of the week that they work and they implement this just for that day or 2. Figure out where the bugs are, what works, what's the conversation look like with your adopters. What's that feel like to folks? And then tweak it, figure it out, train the rest of the folks, and launch the program. And I could not help putting that picture in here. It is not me. It is not me, but colleagues insist it is. But it is not. I would never be caught in that sweater. Yeah? And then you launch your program. I wouldn't recommend launching it on your busiest day of the week, per se. You want people to warm up to it and ease into it. But then you launch the program. And then you follow up, and you assess, and you tweak. So when you follow up, you want to call the adopters. How did this process feel to you? What did you think? Was it convenient? Was it easy? Did you get what you needed from us? The answers are no, not here, or yes, I did, or hey, it took too long, didn't take long enough, I wanted more time with your people. You can tweak that. You can fix it. And then you fix it. And then you evaluate the results, and you adjust as necessary. So, educate yourself. Use the resources to learn about open adoptions, what that means. Learn what the research is. Then get your leadership on board. You have to know who you are. Get your leadership on board. Design the program. Train and test. Implement, assess, evaluate your results. And you're going to want to keep your data to do that as well. You're going to want to take a look at, do your adoptions go up? Do they go down? Does your return rate go up? Does that go down? And I would suggest that if your adoptions don't go up, you have to do this long enough for one to get enough data. If your adoptions don't go up or your return rate goes up, that you look at your matchmaking ability first and then keep tweaking. Look at how many applications you're declining, for example, and just keep looking and reevaluating before you determine that it's not working. But when you implement something new, you can always go back to the way you did it before if you don't think it's working. If you want more information about where those webinars are or ask any questions about this, you can reach me here.
So that piece, again, it just shows us that perhaps we're missing out on an entire segment of people, an entire area that we're not targeting, but our competitors are. Puppy mills are looking at them. They're giving them layaway plans to purchase puppies. So something else to think about. Maybe make some changes and incorporate into your adoption program. So before we go, I want to talk about the rescue certification program in Michigan. Right now in the state of Michigan, absolutely anyone can raise their hand and say, I'm a rescue. That's it. That's all you need to do. There are no regulations, unlike shelters, which have some. So if you heard Nathan talk earlier, and he talked about the Companion Animal Protection Act, CAPA, that's what California did, making it illegal for a shelter of any type to kill an animal if there's a rescue willing and able to take it. He talked about Delaware, which did that and also took it a step further and said it is illegal to kill an animal in a shelter if you have empty cages. We want that here in Michigan. Our problem is shelters have a pretty valid argument with saying, yeah, but what's a rescue? If you're going to pass a law that requires me to give animals to a rescue, how do I know it's a real rescue? I don't have the time and the resources to go through every single person who raises their hand and says I'm a rescue to find out if they're okay. Right now, some shelters have created their own program to screen rescues and partner with them. Some just require you have to be a 501c3. Well, in the past couple of months, in this area of Michigan, we've had 2 cases of rescues that turned out to be not so great. One was just raided by Macomb County, and animal cruelty charges are being filed, and all of the puppies were confiscated. That was a rescue many of us have worked with before. There was also a cat rescue where they went in and found 100 dead cats. And again, this was a rescue many of us were familiar with and had worked with or partnered with. So how can we pass a law like this, which will undoubtedly save many, many lives, yet answer the shelter's question and reliably be able to say, no, that's a safe rescue. That's a real organization operating as an organization, subscribing to the philosophy of do no harm. You can work with them. So at the time that the rescue certification program was started a few years ago, we were killing 100,000 animals in our shelters. Went down to 90,000, and I believe right now we're at about 55,000. Way too many, 55,000 too many, but we're moving in the right direction. So what do we need to do on the rescue side to get that number all the way down to 0? How can we guarantee shelters that it's okay to work with us? So we started the rescue certification program, and it was a task force of folks from Huron Valley Humane Society, an all-breed dog and cat rescue, a purebred small breed rescue, a cat-only rescue. We had shelter medicine veterinarian. We tried to make sure we were represented on all sides, and we wanted to come up with a handbook of best practices. They're not hard and fast rules, but they're best practices. Everything from transporting animals safely and humanely, to identification, to the way you operate or how you even handle your intake. If you take in stray animals, are you following the law? Are you at least scanning them for a microchip, posting them on some of the lost pet pages online? Wanted to come up with a handbook, a guideline. And then we came up with a code of ethics. And if you go to the Michigan Pet Fund booth out in the vendor area, they're on that far side of the front door, they have the handbook and the code of ethics sitting there. Feel free to thumb through them. You can also go to Michigan Pet Fund's website, click rescue certification, and you will see the handbook there, code of ethics there, the application is there. The certification program requires that rescues every year report their numbers, just like shelters do. We want to get a good idea of the picture of the entire state. Right now we know our shelters numbers for the most part. We know their intake numbers, their outcome, what's happening with them, but we have no idea on the rescue side how many animals are going through rescues. So we're getting numbers reported to give us a better idea of where we're at in the state. You'll see that some of the guidelines probably conflict with some of the ways you've been doing things, like importing animals from out of state. In order for Michigan to become a no-kill state, we have to stop bringing in more homeless animals. And I know this is a very hard concept, because for us, to save a life is to save a life. And I absolutely agree, there's value in that. However, if as a bigger picture, we want Michigan to hit no-kill, we do have to stop making more homeless animals by bringing them in from out of state. So one of the ways that the certification program handles that is you can apply for a waiver. And I'll use my rescue as an example. We have one foster who will only do Cocker Spaniels. And I don't care if I go to her with, hey, I've got a Papillon, it's the same size as a Cocker Spaniel, only Cocker Spaniels. So I don't see a lot of them in the shelters that we partner with. There just isn't an abundance. Plus, we have a Cocker Spaniel rescue in the area that tends to take the purebred. So if I get a call from out of state, I have a Cocker Spaniel, it's going to be euthanized, it's either not going up for adoption or it's run out of time and space, I can go to the Pet Fund and ask for a waiver, because I'm not taking away from Michigan's animals. That foster's not taking anything else but a Cocker Spaniel. She has the space. Can I have permission to import that one dog to go there? She's not going to take anything else anyway, and I don't have any shelters right now that have one looking for help. So there are some exceptions. You just have to be very honest. It is a voluntary program, and it is based on the honor system. And the rescue world's pretty small. Most of us tend to know of or know one another. So if you lie, they are going to catch you. But I think it's a step in the right direction, because we can't pass CAPA unless we can show the state of Michigan we have a reliable way to ensure that you're not handing animals off to hoarders, breeders, bad people, and that they are an actual operating rescue. One of the reasons that a 501c3 is required for the certification program is that it gives you longevity. It lets donors know you're going to be around. It gives you a ton more resources than you have without your 501c3, from grant applications all the way to a lot of people will only donate if it's a tax-deductible donation. Some people may be confused by the fact you don't have a 501c3, they make a donation, it's not tax deductible, now they're mad. So I think having your 501c3, it gives you some of that substantive, your real organization, people can count on you to be around longer. So that is one requirement, but for the most part, there are waivers for small things that you may not agree with. And the Code of Ethics is a pretty basic Code of Ethics, and the philosophy of do no harm is exactly that. So I want to let you guys go. The next session is with the Michigan Department of Agriculture, and this is actually going to be a very good opportunity to ask them if they plan to regulate rescues, and if they do plan to regulate rescues, when and how, or any other questions you want to know about how they operate and the way they do things. I have some handouts up here if you're interested, and if you want to talk to me, I'm here for the whole conference. Thank you, guys.